Good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Stratton. I am so thankful to be here. So thank you, Lori, for inviting me to be part of this training with Link to Libraries. I greatly appreciate it. And I also want to say thank you, especially to all the volunteers that are taking the time to join us today. Your work is very important. And my goal today is to help you be the most efficient, effective, read aloud volunteer that you hope to be, because you do and will change lives in the work that you'll be doing. So here, let's get started. And you are welcome, just a couple of things. You're welcome to put questions out in the chat if you'd like during it. I know Lori and I, but we'll be really doing a question and answer session at the end of this. So I wanted to let you know that. So here are our goals today. What we're hoping to do is that you'll understand what, why, and how we read. You'll understand your role as a volunteer reader and how you support the process of young scholars learning to read. And then you'll know some key strategies that you can use for your read aloud sessions when you go in and volunteer in the classroom. So with that, what'd you read today? I actually would love to know. We've all been up early, probably. Maybe some of us got up because it's a really amazing day. I wanted to note, if you've been up early to watch what was going on in London, it's a important day for our world. And so what have you been reading this morning? Go ahead, you can throw that right into the chat. What did you read so far this morning? And for those of you that are watching this as a recording are probably having a similar experience to many of the people that are putting in the chat, that lots of us read some emails this morning. Someone was lucky enough to actually read the newspaper and do a crossword. But a lot of us probably just got started with conducting business. Still more coming in. I'm betting some of us read a text message this morning too. I know I did. And I point that out. I'm pointing out that most of us actually are reading is the business to get us through our day. So a lot of us are reading text messages, emails, maybe the newspaper, but it's about information coming in through our day. And then, but when we think about reading for young scholars, a lot of times it's about books. So the reason I just mentioned that is reading is such an important life skill. Yet not one of us mentioned reading a book this morning. And that is a really complex, hard skill. And for such an important life skill, and one that is so hard, I want you to know that you are showing students that one, they can do it, and two, that when they're successful, it will be something that they use every day in multiple ways. So the next slide. Why do we read? I want you to think about that for a moment. Why do you read? You're welcome to throw that in the chat too if you want to. I'm actually showing you one of the most effective teaching tools, taking a pause, letting some thinking happen. It's okay to be quiet in a teaching space. So why do we read? Well, hopefully, I know I read every evening because it's relaxing. It's the way I end my day. We actually saw all the people that were saying emails, so we're learning to communicate with each other. We read for information. There's so many reasons that we read. But a lot of it's about connecting to our world, connecting to each other. And some are saying even enjoyment. So how do we read? How do you read? There are a lot of ways to read. Some of our favorite ways are actually reading with others. I know someone on here was saying that they are here currently with their 2-year-old granddaughter, and I am hoping, I'm betting they read together, right? It's such a beautiful process to share with others. And a lot of times we read by ourselves. And what's really fun is you can read quietly, but sometimes we have to read loudly, maybe when we're presenting, right? Or maybe when it's a really funny page. And yep, you can read with your eyes shut. You can, because you are listening, right? Sometimes you might want to listen to that poem again, and you just close your eyes, and maybe you're reading it on Audible, or maybe you're listening to someone. And the reason I point this out is sometimes the students in your classroom may close their eyes, just kind of picture it in their head. And some are going to be looking right at you. And some are going to be staring out the window and they're watching the movie, even though you have pictures on the page. So I just wanted to show you that there's so many different ways to read. But the most important one is the last one, that we read with our mind and our heart. And that is the key that volunteer readers bring to the classroom. You know, the teacher's teaching them how to learn to read, and that's not your job. You don't have to do that. You get to show them that when we read, we get to connect with our minds, and most importantly, we get to connect with our hearts, because we get to learn about the world around us. So how do we do that? So first, what is reading? Do I have any risk takers that throw, you could unmute yourself or throw it in the chat. What is reading? What is, I have two symbols. Lori, I'm going to throw it out to you actually. Lori, what are you reading here? What's it say to you?
We're putting together symbols and letters to make stories and share information.
Great. So what are you reading right on this
Peace.
slide? Peace. Now do you see the word peace anywhere?
Nope.
No, you don't. So what told you that?
The symbols. I've come to know that those symbols both mean peace.
Yeah. So in society, we agreed that these symbols, both of them, mean peace. And that evokes certain feelings. What feelings did that evoke for you, Lori?
Calm, hope.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so we can take symbols, whether they are like this, pictures, or we can take scribbly lines that maybe have a big line down and two curvy lines making uppercase B. And we've decided we're going to call it a B, and we're going to say B when we see it. And then when we put it next to a B and then other squiggly lines, and we put it and it's four squiggly lines together and they're curvy, and then we've called it a bear. And it's that, those squiggly lines and that sound, bear, is going to then represent an animal that's brown. And so that's what reading is, taking symbols in front of us and creating meaning from that. What most important though about reading is it's a cognitive process, meaning it all takes place in the brain.
I just logged on to Zoom.
Meaning we're all taking in symbols. And what I want to say is it's a cognitive process that you can do whether you are visually impaired, right? So you're not necessarily seeing the symbols, or you're just listening. So it's really a fully cognitive process that you are creating a story for yourself and pictures in your mind. That's what reading really is. The symbols and then having the letter sounds is more what's called phonics, which is the key, but we don't have to teach that. Once again, we're talking about the connections. So here you are. This is the really complex process. This is what we leave to the teachers, but I wanted you to see it so you could really imagine how challenging this is, especially if you have children in your life. Then they need to have background knowledge, vocabulary. They need to know the structure of our language. They need to be able to have verbal reasoning and knowledge of literacy. And then they have to have what's called phonological awareness, which is the letter sound symbol relationship and decoding it. Well, phonological is actually just hearing. Sorry about that. Just kind of the way language works. And then the decoding insight, all of that is happening in their brain to then be able to read. So where do you fall in? You're in the red. You're actually doing a lot of that background knowledge. You're supporting the vocabulary development, you're supporting the language structure, the verbal reasoning, and the literacy knowledge. That's your part of the rope. And the blue part is what the teachers are focusing in on. So let me help you know exactly what you could do to effectively have some strong strands to create that red rope. Okay, let's do it. Oh, wait, one more thing. This might be like one of those moments for you. It's going to be epiphany, I hope. I wanted you to know something, that reading is not a natural process. Our brains were not designed to read.
Oh, interesting.
All right, thank you. Humans were actually designed to communicate. So language does come natural. The desire to communicate with each other comes natural. And it was a long time before we decided to put things into print and then share that symbols with society and then share it and kind of like create these time capsules of words. And what's most interesting is in order to read, you have to stop and kind of go over the natural processes of your brain to be able to read. So I wanted you to realize that, because I showed you those two strands and how complex reading is. And now I'm telling you it's actually not even natural, and that children need to stop, rewire their brains in order to read. That's how hard this is. And that's why your role is so important, because you're the connection to the outside world that says, I know this is hard, but look, you'll get to connect, you'll get to learn about your world, and what you're doing is really important work. Okay, so that's why I wanted you to know all that. So now, how to do it. All right, so now how to make the most of your time together. First, always have a hook, how you introduce the book. And it doesn't, not flashy. It has to be really connected to the book. So for example, this read aloud is one of my favorites. It's Henry's Freedom Box. Some of you may get the opportunity to read this one. It is just a phenomenal book about slavery, such a hard topic. My hook for this book is always the same. And just so you know, I use stickies. This is not a magic show. I use stickies to remind myself of what's a good hook. Because just so you know, when you put 20 some odd children in front of you, when you're supposed to read, a lot of things can happen. One child could sneeze, one will fart, and one's going to ask you about your outfit. Super distracting. And you're going to forget what your good hook was. So put it on a sticky so you can remember how you're going to hook the kiddos. Trust me, I've been around a lot of kiddos. They are wonderful distractions. So when you're with them, you're going to say, for me, my hook, ready? It's huge. What is freedom? I want to know. And I will ask them, what is freedom? And I'm going to say to them, I want you to think about that, because it is such a big question. What is freedom? And then when you have a sense of what you think freedom is, I have a second question for you. What would you do for freedom? Hear that silence, how powerful that is? Their brains are going to be going, wow, freedom. I've just hooked them. And then I'm going to tell them, well, we're going to read a story today, Henry's Freedom Box, a true story from the Underground Railroad by Ellen Levine and illustrations by Kadir Nelson. And we're going to find out what freedom means to Henry and what he's willing to do to get it. Look at that. I just pulled them all in. And you always want to make sure you read the author and the illustrator. And you show them cover and you give them that big question to think. So that's how you hook them. Then you know when to stop. So the other thing I do is I always make sure I have stickies on where I'm going to stop. I stop 3 times, the most, beginning, middle, end. Okay, pick the spot where the author asks you to think. The author wants you to connect. Those are the times that you'll want to stop. Not every page, and not asking questions. What color is Red Riding Hood's cloak? Deep, meaty questions. that the author really wants you to think about. Okay, so that's, you only stop a few times, and then you always have keywords. My keywords, I throw them on the front, and you can do those at the very beginning. You could go over the words at the beginning if you want to, or integrate it into your read aloud. There's no right or wrong here. It just depends on the book. It depends on your style, and it depends on your students. And then the final thing you're going to do is make sure that you make connections. So your question, and then you weave it all together with that thread. Remember, we read that, we weave it all together. So those are the most important things that you do for your read aloud. You're going to have a hook. You're going to have when you're going to stop, because otherwise they're going to stop you on every page. And if you stop 20 times, it's going to take way too long. So only stop a few times. Make sure you have your keywords and make connections. I'm going to talk about my keywords in a moment. I think that's the next slide. Yep. Okay. So you're like, well, how do I know what the keywords are, Jen? Well, there's some easy ways to think about that. There's actually this thing called tiers of vocabulary, meaning like pies, or cake tiers, right? Cake tiers. Okay. So we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 is at the bottom here. It's the basic words. So we have basic words are tier 1, and that's like dog, house, book, really self-explanatory. Then there's tier 2, which are words that have multiple meanings, like table. So I'm at a table right now. That's what my computer's on, but let's table that for later. All right, that's a tricky word. Or like the periodic table, all right, or multiplication tables, right? There's a lot of tables. And so we need to be looking for those in our book, just like the word fly. Like I put the insect on here, but look at the plane, right? And then, so the tier 2 are the trickiest words. And then you have the academic ones like ecosystem, and look at the word photosynthesis. Like that's just an awesome word, like super long, super fun to say. Kids love it when they learn to spell that. So academic words, although we spend time on them, are kind of the easiest for their brain because they're the coolest words. So kids love those and they hook onto them. The ones that are going to stump your readers are going to be those tier 2. So when I look at this book, there are some tier 2 words that I came up with. The first one, and it's a hard one, is master, right? You can master something, or you can be a master. Like in this book, they need to not confuse like mastering how to tie your shoes or mastering how to read a book with Henry's masters. Like that is important that they know the difference. Another word, station. Right? I'm not talking about like a Xbox station or something like that. I'm talking about a station where Henry goes to then travel. And then the last one. So Henry goes to the station, right? He actually, just so you know, I'm not going to spoiler alert. He actually, as he gets older and becomes an adult male, and a father and a family member, he puts himself in a box. He has people who help him, and he's willing to go in a small box and be mailed. And so at one point they say right side up, and that's kind of an odd phrase, like a right side up. And I wanted them to understand that because at a point Henry is not right side up, and I want them to understand like what it means for this man to be in this small box for so long, traveling, and he's not even right side up. I want them to empathize and think about that. And so that's why I thought right side up was really important phrase that I wanted them to have. And also it's multiple meaning, right? We can write something. We have a right hand. So there's a lot of things there, and that's why. So I picked just 3 words, but those were important words to it, to understand and really do the deep thinking around Henry's story that I wanted them to. So that's what we do. We hook, we go over the words, and then we make connections. And there's 3 kinds of connections to make. Text to self. So the book to yourself. Oh, that reminds me when. Or text to text. Oh, that reminds me of a book when in this. Right? So they might make a connection to like another book that they've read, or something in the world. Oh, that reminds me when I was at this, well, that might be a text to self. So in the world. So we have to think about that one. That is just, the hardest one. Kids are awesome at text to self. Text to text is a little bit harder. So when you're picking your read alouds, I know you get a whole bunch of books. You might want to think about the sequence with which you read them. So that way they connect and they can build. But those are the 3 types of connections that you'll want to make and encourage your students to make. And when you encourage them to make, so you might have a stopping point where you're saying, well, what connections are you making to Henry at this time? And you're ready. Here is the class. Here's the moves. One of the awesome teacher moves I love to make. I say, okay, I want you all to think, what connections are you making to Henry right now? And now turn and quietly share that to the person next to you. And then you listen to what they're saying. And then you have them and you say, okay, now I'm ready to hear. So now everyone shared. And then you can ask for 1 or 2 hands, because otherwise they all raise their hands and you're trying to call on 20 kiddos and you feel bad. So just have them, it's called think, pair, share. That's the move. Think, pair, share. And now you'll just call in a couple of them and you were listening to those pairs. So you might pick 1 or 2 that you really thought were like awesome. So just a little kind of move that you can make, teaching move, because I know a lot of people get stuck when all 20 hands are raised. So go ahead and let them talk to each other first. So finally, these are just some of the things that you just have a plan. Read the book beforehand. I would recommend reading it 3 times. Read it the first time just for pure enjoyment. Just read the book. It's fun to read kids' books. Read the book and enjoy it. Second time through, think, how am I going to hook the kids? Where might I stop? Third time, maybe look at the vocabulary. All right, enjoy it. So, but have a plan. When we don't have plans, they know. It gets a little challenging. Keep it to 20 to 30 minutes. That's all you need. That's all that teachers have to give. That's all the scholars have to give. They have other things they need to get to. By the way, this is going to happen. You're going to pick up your book that you are prepared and so excited, and they're going to go, oh, we read that book. That is totally going to happen. And you say, fantastic. So ready, the first thing you say, fantastic. We had to reread it together. And we can talk about it. And you'll be able to have even more to say about it. Rereading is great. Why do you rewatch movies? Why do you reread books? Because it's great. Because each time you get more out of it. Each time you're when they read it 2 weeks ago, they were a different student than they are in front of you. And you have something different to bring to it than maybe their teacher did. So rereading is absolutely fantastic. They will actually do better with it, because this book has so much in it that, I've read it a lot of times, and every time, in fact, today I was rereading it before this, and I thought, oh, I hadn't noticed that. Like there's this whole imagery with leaves, and I didn't notice that the author switches from just leaves falling from a tree to tobacco leaves. And I thought, whoa, that was such an awesome move. What a great technique from that writer. So last and most important, have fun. Reading's supposed to be fun. I showed you how hard it is. I showed you how much we are asking of these young scholars and their growing brains. So please have fun. So now you're saying, okay, now I get this. Like, I'm going to have a plan. I'm going to think, well, but what about resources? I'm not a teacher. You're right. Most of you aren't. So there are some places to go to. One, the Link to Libraries website has Lori has lots of resources for you, but there also are some other places to go. Like if you're really kind of interested, and especially when I tell you that reading is not a natural process and you're like, this is more interesting than I thought, you can go to the Reading is Fundamental website. It has a lot of information there. Reading Rockets is probably my favorite, especially if some of you have early young readers in your household or in your lives. You might want to go to that website and really watch some of the videos, because there is so much we can be doing in children's lives to enrich the experience of learning to read. And then finally, all these authors, Lori picks amazing books, and they have awesome authors, and they usually have websites that will have sometimes the hook, the vocabulary, all of it planned out for you. And not that you have to do the whole thing, but at least it gives you a starting point. So that is, those are all the pieces that I can put together for you. I think it's probably most important now to kind of hit upon your questions. Hopefully you now know what, why, and how we read. Hopefully you understand your role a bit more, and you have a few strategies that you're going to put in your pocket when you show up to read aloud. So I'm going to stop here for a moment and stop sharing. And Lori, did you have anything to open it up to, or?
Sure. I just had a couple of things I was thinking about as you were speaking in terms of the logistics. And I want to just remind everybody, I know most of you got a reader tip sheet, but just wanted to remind you, you are never to be left alone in the classroom. The teacher should always be there with you. And the teacher always helps if things are getting a little bit rowdy or it's hard to, wrangle them in. The teacher should be able to help you with that. But please make sure that they know, that they need to stay there with you throughout the reading. The other thing is you are also coming with all of these wonderful books that we gave you. So this is the most fun at the end of the reading, is to watch the kids select from the books that you brought. So we love for you guys to stay for that, because that's the fun stuff. And they come up to you and they show you the book that they chose. It's just a really nice interaction. So if you can, and if you want to, please say to the teacher if they could help you to call up the students, but stay for the process. It's fun. It's really fun to watch. And then the next time you see the child, if you remember the book, you can ask them about it.
Lori, I think you're helping remind me of something that's really important. When you go into the classroom, I would watch how the teacher transitions the students and try to mimic that in some way. So like if they're using a clap or they're using tone, the more you can see on how the classroom is managed and fit into that. You don't have to do exactly the same way, but take the cues from the teacher. The students will respond even better. And I do agree. I think watching students receive their books and pick their books and get to talk to them is by far one of the greatest gifts you get during this process.
You get to be Santa Claus once a month. So now if anybody has any questions, I know that oftentimes one reader asks a question that everybody's been thinking about the whole time. So if anybody does have a question, please feel free, we'll open it up to anything you might like to ask. And if Jen was just amazing and covered every little bit, then that's okay too.
I did see that someone mentioned that they do let the teacher know ahead of time what they'll be bringing in and reading. And I think that is just a great idea. So then the teacher can kind of get the students ready or give you some feedback on like, oh yeah, that's a great one. They'll connect to it. So yeah, just sending an email to the teacher, letting them know what book you're reading is a super idea.
All right, everyone. Well, we are so grateful for your presence here today. We're so grateful for what you're about to do out in the world. We are always here for you. If anything pops up, please don't ever hesitate to reach out. We're happy to help with anything. And we are just so very grateful. So thank you. Have a wonderful day and happy reading.
Thank you. Excellent workshop.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Um, hmm.